Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. GAVS Technologies welcomes you all for another webinar session on one of the hottest challenges we all IT managers and IT leaders are fighting with today. Let me introduce myself first. I'm the moderator. My name is Chandra Mouleswaran. I'm leading the product and IP creation in GAVS Technologies. I've been in the industry for the past 30 plus years doing IT operations and management. I have experienced many challenges the industry has gone through. In my view, I think you will agree, some challenges are new and some challenges are recycled. If I have to give an example, so the migration from host computing that we did 30 years ago to client server computing that we did about 20 years ago, and again back to cloud computing and now to edge computing are all recycled challenges. Some may agree, some may not agree. But there are some challenges, like the one that we will talk about today, has been knocking on our doors for quite some time, but we are not interested in them. Until we were forced to take up on this challenge of making every employee work from home suddenly. I think it happened about 18 months ago. All of us jumped into these 18 months ago, and we are still cooking a recipe for making it a success. Many CISOs and CTOs have sleepless nights. I have heard this from many, of not knowing what would happen when. We in GAVS Technologies, because of our affinity to the product, have been getting more queries on the market about whether we have any solutions for monitoring the end user devices and of course the end users themselves. So we thought of addressing this problem with a set of senior professionals from the various spaces, various towers, information security, Vdir technology, AI-driven end user monitoring, and intelligent automation. We have 4 eminent speakers. I will introduce them as we start speaking to them. They all have been working on the possible solutions to make the remote working a success. As I said, I'm the moderator for today's discussion, and I'll be taking you through various stages towards finding a solution. Now, let me first introduce Kannan Srinivasan, who will initiate the discussions by sharing his challenges in remote working from his views, from the eyes of an information security leader. He has about 20 years experience in cybersecurity and an SME by himself in cloud security, vulnerability management, identity and access management, and running security operations center, designing and running. He has handled multiple cybersecurity transformation engagement for various domains, specifically in BFSI and healthcare. And of course, he's certified CGIT, CSM, and CRISC. I welcome Kannan into this discussion. Good afternoon, Kannan. Now,
very good.
I recently read a blog, I think you all must have read, that work from home is a ticking bomb for cybersecurity. There are continuous pushes and pull between the security team and employees on the new InfoSec controls that organization want to deploy to secure the data and the customer data, organization data from cyber threats. So what are your views and suggestions on that?
Okay, thank you so much, Chandra. Yes, working from home in the last 18 months especially, right? Like, I mean, has definitely been a challenge for the information security space. I'll start with some of the challenges that we currently face. Working remotely using unsecured home networks. So home network, what we have seen is, like, I mean, it's always an easy target for attackers when compared to the corporate networks. Many home networks, they still use the default user ID and passwords, like for example, admin or admin passwords. So resulting in anybody able to access your home network and able to monitor the traffic of your laptops and desktops. Employees, many times, like, I mean, they use freely available Wi-Fi networks, be it in the coffee shop or in the mall. Now, there is a risk of fake Wi-Fi, what is also called as evil twin, resulting in shoulder surfing of activities and resulting in data leakage possibilities. Reduced security on BYOD and mobile devices. Now, In a work from home cyber threat survey, what they found is 56% of the employees use their personal computers for office work, and it has do not have any controls over the plugins they have on the browsers or the software that is getting installed. And in many cases, you are not even sure about whether they really have a original operating system or not. And next one is the laptop issues, especially the hardware issues resulting in the productivity loss. So what we have seen is like at least 5% of the laptops, like have some kind of a hardware related issues. They either have to come to the office to get it fixed, or if they are in a very remote place, like they have to ship it and then get it fixed in the office and get it back. So as a result of it, what really happens is not many organizations have implemented some of the controls like OneDrive and other file share network where they can keep their data safely. This results in enormous amount of productivity loss, at least for 2-3 days. Like they really have to wait, and that productive hours is getting lost. Next one is the security awareness is less among the new joiners. So today, if you really look at it, like your colleague is not someone who is sitting right next to you. So it can be somebody from another city, or he can be from another state, or even from another country. So industry has added a lot of new resources coming from different areas, and very diverse background, and especially not to talk about the freshers who really have no idea about how an office environment works. So what has really happened is, if an organization does not have a robust security awareness training program in place, there is always a possibility of resources interpreting it, the security requirements in their own way, and they do something different, resulting in some kind of a cybersecurity incident. Just to give an example, it may be a mission critical work that they have to work on, and they may send a file to their personal account, or send it to their on-site team's personal mail account, but that will actually result in a some compromise. So last but not the least, the family members using official devices. So we have seen a lot of these cute pictures wherein uh, an employee posting um, their son or daughter, or their mother and grandmother, working on their office computers, and they even join some of the video conference calls, right? It is good. The family members are they accepted the fact that they are their uh, the employees are working from home, they support in their best possible way. But what has also happened is, some of the family members, they access employees office laptops. So as a result, what really happens is, they go to the malicious sites, or try to download some software, or click on any link, or any phishing link that comes to their personal email ID. This results in a cybersecurity incident. So these are some of the key challenges that we face because of remote working, Chandra.
Thanks, Kannan. The last one is very interesting. The family members using official laptops. And we have also seen the family members joining the conference calls. So that apart, I think you talked about unsecured home network and bring your own devices, which are bringing the challenges. When you speak, then this problem came to me. In fact, I heard this. Many organizations say that most of the employees, about 50 to 60%, they work directly on customer network from their laptops, could be their own laptop or the organization laptop, and not connecting to the organization network at all. So as a result of which, those laptops or the desktops do not get a chance to get the recent or the latest virus and anti-OS patches and updates. How do you suggest to handle this? Is this a problem, or we have overcome that?
This is still a problem, Chandra. So just to highlight some of the key challenges because of employees connecting to the remote, the client network, right? The first and foremost issue is not having an up-to-date antivirus and patching compliance. What we have seen is 60% of the data breach, it happens purely because of misconfigured system patches or an application patch, that is not applied on time, right? Resulting in the vulnerability, being exploited. Number one, not all the organizations have implemented remote monitoring and management. So what it really means is the virus updates and patch installation. It's definitely a challenge. Um, I know organizations where we ask employees to connect to the office network using VPN, or in some rare cases, we even ask them to come to the office to get the patches and antivirus, to be updated. But in reality, what is really happening is not all the laptops are getting patched, or it's not having the latest antivirus in place. And not to mention, many people, they don't even restart their mission. So as a result, the updates are really not happening. The second issue that we have seen is the complaints due to the digital nomads. So what I mean by this is, so today, an employee who is supposed to take care of PHI data or PI data, be it an HIPAA compliance, VCA compliance, right? Uh, because they no longer work in the office, a new concept of work from anywhere, or there are some countries that promote employees to just come there and work with a lot of other colleagues. Now, what is really happening is you get a chance to work with a lot of other like-minded IT professionals. That is definitely there, but you never know who comes with a malicious intent. So they have a very nice way of asking for your user ID and password, or they are able to crack into your mission and try to take the personal data, or if you are processing any PHI or PII data, they are able to take a look at it, and sometimes they are even able to take the data out. And next one is enforcing the organizational security policies. So be it your password policies or hardware encryption, the web traffic monitoring, and user behavior analytics, right? It has become extremely difficult for the security team to enforce these security policies in the laptops, especially that is used by the employees, who connect to the client network directly. So as a result of it, monitoring becomes a major challenge. And last but not the least, the vulnerability assessment, especially when it comes to some of the compliance requirements, like say PCI or HIPAA, one of the requirement is you have to perform the vulnerability assessment on the endpoints. In reality, what is happening is doing this kind of an assessment, it becomes a challenge, and as a result, it becomes a non-compliance, and in many cases, getting it fixed also takes a lot of time for many organizations. So these are definitely some of the key challenges that we currently face because of the employees connecting to the client network directly from their home network. Chandra.
Thank you, Kannan. The non-update of antivirus patches, antivirus updates and OS patches is real threat. And now that we have heard from Kannan about the challenges and other possible scenarios that he described, let us go to the poll and get the feedback from audience, what they think as the biggest challenge they are facing in work from home. And take about 30 seconds to 1 minute to do this. We have given 4 options. Employees not connecting to organization network, that we saw, that very prevalent in the IT industry. Decreased productivity, could be due to many things, that the IT team taking more time to resolve when it goes out, or as Kannan said, that it could be used by the family members. And then the third one is the poor internet bandwidth at home. I think we heard this quite long initially. Not sure whether this is still there. And fourth one is interesting, user impersonation. Somebody else sitting in front of the computer and executing few things. So I request the guests to select which they think as the biggest challenge they find from home model. Anand, you can close if we have finished 1 minute, then we'll see the results. Okay, very interesting. The employees not connecting to organization network and poor network bandwidth is actually taking 76%. Decreased productivity and user impersonation is not that much, which is in line with what Kannan said. Kannan, of course, did not talk about the internet bandwidth. Maybe I think we have more speakers will do that. Thanks, Kannan, and thanks, Gust, for sharing your real hands-on experience at what you and all of us have been going through. Let us talk to another gentleman, Muraleedharan Vijayakumar, who has about 20 years experience in building applications using cutting-edge technologies like big data and cloud. And he started his professional journey as a Java developer, and he got into object-oriented design and development. And in the process, he actually mastered the data management technologies, Kafka, Solar, Hadoop, and SOA and REST web services. He was a vital member of the team in GAVS, which developed the predictive analytics solution 6 years ago. And that is actually from the base of the Zero Instant Framework product that we have. This is our AIOps platform. Over the last few years, he has managed one of the products for GAVS, that is ZDesk, a VDA product. Probably he's the best person on chat now today on how VDA could help for some of the problems that Kannan shared with us. And so let me welcome Murali into our discussion. Very good afternoon, Murali. You have heard what Kannan has said about that, right? Patching problem and poor internet bandwidth, unsecured home network and all. I heard that VDA technology, even though it came about 10 to 11 years ago, I remember it was about 2008 or 9, it was actually peak. But it was not that popular, but it actually became popular during this the last 18 months. So everyone thought that would help organization becomes more compliant and secure. My question to you, I want your views. Is it really helping the organization? What changes do you see in the VDA space?
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Chandra. And yes, as Kannan said, the whatever points he has listed, it's all a real challenge when it comes to remote working. And as we all know, as you rightly said, Chandra, the remote working as a concept is more popular during the COVID pandemic. And all it caused the fluctuation in the market where organization and business needs to maintain the business continuity because people are working from home and how to connect to the environment, either to the customer or the remote location, right? So that's a challenge, actually, a real challenge. And one of the main challenge business during the pandemic was to promise a secure workplace for an employee. So that's what is Kannan talked about. How can we give a secure workplace to an employees, right? So business owners has to come up with a lot of business continuity plan and maintain sustainability. All these things are matters, actually. So as you all know, right? So the VDA is a technology that helps organization and to bring the business continuity or to give the more secure workplace. So it is something like it will take everything from our local, like in terms of resource, compute, storage, and move to everything to the central location. To specifically to answer to the questions what which Kannan asked, right? One is the how do we update patches, right? And in a normal scenario where a desktop will be or the laptop will be carried by the end user, and it is highly impossible for us to update the recent patch to the OS or the antivirus patch. So everything is a challenge. So with the VDI technology, right? So as I said, everything is moved to the central, where user desktop also will be from the central location. So updating patch and antivirus patch or the Windows patch, we can do it from the one central location, that is a master image, where it will applies to the all the desktops. So that is one. Second thing is secure work or secure environment, right? So for example, wherever an end user is connecting or whichever device he is using, actually that doesn't matter in a sense. In terms of bandwidth, right? The bandwidth also is one of the challenge we are seen in the poll question, right? So when we use a VDA, it will not take much, it will not consume much bandwidth actually speaking. Just need to have a KBs in while initial connection, then the rest and all, it will be very smooth. So also the connection between the device and the desktop, right? Always through a secure channel, either through an HTTPS, or we can use a client to connect to the desktop. And nowadays organization allowing an end users to take their own device and connect to the environment, where they can connect to any device. They are using their personal device to connect to the environment as well. So in that case, we don't need to worry about this at all, because at the end of the day, your desktop will be on the central location. We need a device that is act as a medium to connect from between end user to the desktop. So if you want to add an additional layer to the device, right, we can just have an firewall end user monitoring just need to be applied to the device, but it's not required. But still, if you want to add more extra layer to that, no, we can use that. And other challenges what Kannan talked about, let's say if my desktop or the end user desktop or laptop got damaged or something needs to be replaced, and if somebody is working from a very long distance, we cannot send an engineer to replace it, or they need to ship something from there, right? So in that case, they can just switch to any available device, just need a browser to connect to the VDI environment that will be easily accessed, and they can continue their work, and the productivity also will be getting increased. And the compliance part, as again, how I spoke about on the updating the patches and the antivirus, the compliance also will be adhered, because just need to apply all the policies within the AD or into the master template that will be automatically applied to all the desktop. The final one, he talks about an interesting thing where family members or the people, when we're working from remote, family members also can access the system, right? So while using a VDI, we can just need to enable the ideal timeout session. For example, if a system is idle for a couple of minutes, just need to enable that, the timeout session. Also, we can enable the two-factor authentication in the VDI session, where whenever somebody is not, away from the system will get logged again. If you want to log in, this two-factor authentication will definitely help them to protect. So even if they're from a public network, they're using a public network, or somebody on the travel, they're using this two-way factor authentication, the ideal session definitely will help. So there are a lot of controls which definitely will help. The remote working, if we go via VDA technology. Chandra.
Good, Murali. And I'm happy to note that you have addressed two challenges that the audience posed as the biggest challenge. One is the poor internet bandwidth. Second one is the patch updates. Both of you addressed that. But if the VDA is the win-win solution for both the security team and the employees, why it has not picked up as expected? Audience says poor internet bandwidth. You say VDA requires only lesser bandwidth. And patch update is the problem, Kannan said. Of course, the audience also said, and you said with a single image you can resolve that. But why VDA has not picked up? Can you throw some light on that?
Sure, Chandra. You rightly touched upon the point. See, despite of having all the controls and the things in place for the VDA, wherever we implement our solution to a customer, people will acknowledge that yes, our solution is best and it's working fine. All these things are there. Only challenge what I could see, Chandra, some of the users inside the VDA also have a power user setup where they will be having an admin access. It's a business demand where we need to throw or we need to give an admin access to them. They'll be installing a lot of applications into the desktop and they will be start using that. The challenge what we see, Chandra, where while doing this kind of activity, sometimes the VDA image got corrupted or the response of the applications most of the time is very slow. That leads to a issue to a VDA where people started reporting that yes, we have a slow response in the VDA, my application is not working. So that seems to be a real challenge, and that what I feel that should be something which needs to be go beyond the typical end user monitoring, and we need to find out that problem, Chandra. So that is a troubleshooting problem what we have right now apart from what we have.
Okay, thank you. So a quick question to Kannan. Kannan, what's your view on VDA? Do you think that it would solve the problems you had mentioned?
Yes, Chandra. So based on Murali's reply, right, what I feel is if the VDA is properly configured, right, and if you use all the best practices, VDA is definitely a great solution. What I also see from the recent Gartner report is by 2023, they are actually projecting like close to 50% of the user will be using VDI or a desktop as a service solution. So with that said, I clearly see some of the key benefits of using VDI are you have a very good visibility of all the desktops that is connected to the network, number one, and a good centralized monitoring that is there in place. Enforcing security policy, it's very easy, and achieving a 100% compliance is a reality in VDI. Since all the activities happen in VDI, the possibility of any DLP incidents are very, very less. Employees cannot use their USBs. They cannot, take a printout and other aspects. Right? Like, so that way, it is really protected. We don't have to worry too much about the endpoints, like driverless, PCs. That's what like Murali suggested, right? Both from the bandwidth perspective and copying any data to the local drives. Like it's all completely taken care. So I definitely see VDI as one of the best and the candidate, when it comes to addressing some of the security challenges.
Thanks, Kannan, and thanks, Murali. So Murali briefed on few challenges he experienced in making the remote monitoring a success using VDA. Of course, those challenges are there even for non-VDA environment. Now let's ask Suresh Kumar, who is our next speaker and who is with us today. Suresh has about 20 years of experience in product and program management across various domains, BFSI, logistics, market analytics, and information analytics, inventory, payment gateway, and all. He has come across various technologies like classic MS technologies, modern cloud-based technology suites, and open source technology stacks. In GAVS, he has designed and architected the end-to-end AI-driven monitoring and the discovery solution named as ZIF Monitor and ZIF Discovery, the two critical modules in the Zero Incident Framework. And Suresh is actually going to talk to us about how we can overcome the challenges that Murali has mentioned in using the remote monitoring. So very good afternoon, Suresh. Welcome to this webinar. Let's start this question. Now that you claim to have an AI-driven intelligent monitoring solution in your ZIF Monitor, how can you help the VDA administrators and the users with your solution?
Very good afternoon, Chandra. Thanks for this. And very good afternoon, guest and team. So our endpoint monitoring solution, in general, I'm just going to get into the challenges what we typically have in this industry, right? So that's in specific, and as well as Kannan touched on few and Murali touched on some of the aspects. If you look at that, as I projected in the screen, three major items. This is section one of the challenges, right? Three major things if you look at One is on the security factor of it. There are a lot of security threats in terms of using a remote endpoint, that to working on a remote environment. That is one aspect of it. Second is whether my resources are optimally utilized, be it a laptop or be it a VDA kind of solution, anything, be it whether my users are properly using it, or is it being utilized in a wrong way or unmanaged way kind of thing, right? So those things we need to be able to understand it better. The next thing is, as Kannan touched multiple times, the authenticity is a big question, because whether the right user is using the desktop or endpoint device is another big challenge. So these are all common challenges what we see in the industry, and typically if you look at this is how now I'm getting into the details of that. I have classified as three buckets of solution if you look at. So the typical endpoint monitoring, be it a desktop or a laptop or VDI, these are all the key factors it has to ensure. So when it comes to the security point of view, if you look at the compliance of it, whether any unwanted application installed, Murali was saying that if a user is given admin access for business need, there is a lot of chance that they may install a application which is needed for their purpose. But what if it's an application which is against the organization policy? So that's where the patches, be it software license, be it is quite important that we understand the right software gets into the endpoint devices. And similarly, the application inventory. So there is a set of standards defined by the organization. So we need to ensure the right set of inventory are maintained across the devices. There are a set of licenses which are procured. What if we go on overboard on that and we utilize more number of licenses? So these are all some factors which comes in the path of one, from IT management aspect of it. Second, in terms of security, because I install some application which may be very vulnerable, right? Because I have admin access, but I go and install it as an end user, it may cause a big threat to the industry, as well as for the organization. Now, next comes the services, right? It is quite important that we monitor all the services which are running in the endpoint devices. It could be a DLP service, or it could be endpoint security service. But what if it goes down, either intentionally or unintentionally? So it's quite important that we monitor that. And then the event logs, because constantly operating system communicates and tells that there are some key information that are happening around that information, the endpoint. So it is quite important that we monitor all those and then take immediate action around that. And then that's where the crux of the monitoring comes into play. So these are all the factors on the security point of view, Chandra. And the other aspects, if you look at in terms of whether my resources are properly utilized, be it my disk space, be it my RAM capacity allocated, or whether my storage of it, whatever be it, right? So quite important if you look at whether all the applications which I'm using are all like, is it always needed? It's quite important that I open n number of applications, but I maybe keep complaining that my endpoint device is slow. So it's quite important that we understand the right applications are running there, and we get notified in case there is any non-standard kind of applications running there. And then similarly, when it comes to the VDA, it's quite important that there is a common pool of resources which get distributed across multiple users. So it's important that the right user gets the right amount of resources, be it memory, be it CPU or computer storage. So that's where the right slice of information has to be written to that. And the last but not the least, the authenticity factor of it. So it's quite important that the right user is using the devices. So with our monitoring solution, it provides all the solution whatever we have talked about, and there are a lot more to cover. But these factors, whether the right member is sitting in your endpoint device or right user is using it, so it's quite important that we address or come to know about these factors right at the right moment, so that we can take action on that. Chandra and team.
Okay, thanks, Suresh. I think you touched upon 4 important things. Let me just say that compliance, inventory, and utilization. Utilization is one that actually makes the IT managers or the service desk managers nightmare. Most of the tickets are all lack of resources, and compliance and is what the IT security team would love to hear, and inventory is again what IT manager would love to hear. And the most importantly, you also talked about whether the right user is sitting in front of the end user device and monitoring. While it may not be much relevant to some industries, but I can see a relevance to that in the healthcare, particularly where some sensitive jobs ought to be done only by the authorized personnel. Yes, the work from home puts that challenge. So keeping that aside, now coming back to these challenges again. Again, I'm looking at this from the IT team who has been actually taking the brunt of this work from home. During these work from home days, there is a constant complaint that IT team is taking more time to resolve the issues and thereby more cost. So do you think that any of these end user monitoring that you said, you have any solution in helping reducing the time and cost?
Yes, Chandra, it's actually a very important point that to the given work from home situation today. So our endpoint monitoring solution actually covers another key factor, that is in terms of RCA, that's a root cause analysis. That's the challenge part 2 of it, and then the productivity factor of it. So that's what how our solution is going to derive these factors. It doesn't matter whether it's any type of endpoint device. It could be a laptop, desktop, or a VDI. So these factors has to be measured then and there, and we'll be able to take measure on that. So I'll just go deeper onto this. Our ZIF monitor has a component called TJM. That's nothing but the transaction journey mapping. So it's an AI-driven engine. What it does is, I'll just quickly flip to a sample of output here. You can see that this is the endpoint device. For convenience, I have enabled the tooltip on all the nodes, but typically in our solution, it will be like when you mouse over, you will get it. But if you look at here, this is my endpoint device, and it's communicating with n number of other IPs and ports and so on. So if you look at, this is one process, it's an Angular process, there is a Java process, there is an Outlook, and there is a Teams. So all these things actually making communication. And I have chosen some period here, and I can choose any set of period using my calendar. And this, what it does, it identifies the kind of response time between this target IP versus this particular endpoint. It could be an endpoint, any type of endpoint, or even it can be a server. So this server, how it is communicating with the target environment, for what purpose? There is an Angular, so what is the kind of bytes it's making a transaction, which port is it using, and what is the kind of response time in milliseconds and an average point of view, right? So this information is captured by our solution, and what it does with that is we use our AI engine. So all this information captured are processed by our AI engine, and it sees a pattern around that. So whenever it sees that the kind of response time between a endpoint device or between a node which communicates with another node, when it sees that there is an unusual spike or there is a way beyond kind of response time consumption, it gives an alert. So that's where the AI engine plays a major role there, and that actually now adds value to the root cause analysis, because it's quite important that when the desktop, the L1 person or L2, L3 who gets into that to solve the problem of a endpoint device, they need to upfront get the information or the picture about what's really happening on the endpoint device. It could be that something else is consuming a lot of process. So that's what this point talks about, which process or application is consuming so much of memory, CPU, disk. So at point of time, it is consuming too much of memory so that it's not giving the enough consumption or resource requirement for the sibling of processes that are running in the same machine. So it's quite important that we get this information right on the same level at a given snapshot of time. What are all the processes that are consuming, what is the kind of resource utilization. That way the root cause analysis is straight into that, because they can see which process or application is consuming either too much of IO or too much of network traffic. Even that is quite important, because they may clog the entire endpoint for a moment or even for a continuous period. That may result in a wrong perception for the end user, like my endpoint is not at all functioning, or it is functioning very weirdly at times. So that's the kind of complaint usually we will get, and this solution actually addresses that, Chandra. The last but not the least, it's the productivity measurement, because I may be opening n number of applications in my endpoint device and I just move on to one to the next. But what's really happening on the background, these are all consuming my resources, right? So it's quite important that we understand the kind of usage that's happening across this, and then get a pattern around that. So it's again an AI-driven pattern. So it analyzes all this and then gives you notification in terms of which application is actually least used by the user, but they keep opening it and left it in the background, and but they are actually consuming too much of your resource. But it actually impacts the productivity of the user. One. Number two, the user is using so much of application which are not in standard of the organization. They are not supposed to use, or the kind of message, maybe a kind of over the internet, like non-standard organization standard mail usage. So those are all the things our solution monitors and provide right information at the right time, so that the rest of the things, like be the desktop owner or the environment, the person who takes care of the environment can take the action around that. Chandra.
Okay, thanks, Suresh. The transaction journey mapper itself is a good solution. It actually captures the bottlenecks and constraints. AI added on top of that, telling what was the past and what is present and what is future, will really actually help IT team proactively detect the problems and resolve it. Of course, there are more questions to that, Suresh, like how much this will put the overhead on the system and the network and all, but I will leave that question to the guests. Maybe someone will like to answer that. Before we go to our last speaker, one quick question to Murali. So Murali, if you are a consumer of a VDA, would you buy that TJM solution that Suresh has just talked about that?
Certainly, Chandra. Suresh actually touched upon the real issue what we are facing as a consumer, because the RCA is one of the thing where definitely will help, because most of the times we will not be knowing where the issue is in terms of typically the power user people, right, where they will be installing a lot of application, which application got crashed because of what. So along with RCA and the inventory management together definitely will bring a good insights to for us to see where is the actual issue and we can address that. And then resource utilization again, Chandra, is again one of the great thing that where we ourselves, we allocate more resource. It's again based on the template, right? For example, some users may need a good amount of resource where he is really not consuming that, and some other template the user need more resource where we are not able to provide that. So if you're able to get that which user endpoint is consuming more resources, right, we can just iron out that, or using the AI driven whatever is talked about, right? So just decrease the resource and we can increase the resource wherever is needed. So it seems to me a very good feature, Chandra. This was what I expecting. So beyond a normal end user monitoring, so definitely that will help. And along with our VDA solution, this end user monitoring or TJM will definitely be a good fit for an organization.
Thank you, Murali, and thanks, Suresh.
Sure.
Now we have the second poll question. We have heard from Kannan, Murali, and Suresh. Let's have that. What do you need to make remote working a success? There are 4 options there. VDI, of course, which looks an easy winner. The comprehensive end user monitoring solution. Obviously, one would think that VDI and the end user monitoring would be the best bet, but okay, I think the option is you can select all that apply. Then employee-friendly information security policies, AI-driven monitoring and automation. We are not talked about that automation. I think that's the next one. But let's see what the audience thinks as what is the need to make the remote working a great success. Okay, I think we can close the poll and see the results. Oh, I think AA is the hot buzzword in the market, and that's not wrong. 69% of the audience think that AI-driven monitoring and automation will help remote monitoring, remote working a success. Of course, the VDI comes next, and the comprehensive end user monitoring solution. It's a good survey, good results, and mostly on the expected lines. Now let's turn towards Alwinking. Alwinking Rajamani, thanks for waiting for some time to get into the discussion, Alwin. Alwin is a collaborative leader, a passionate product leader. He has about 25 years of experience in developing and delivering software solutions in ERP, ECP, and mobile apps. He has joined GAVS 8 years ago, and he had earlier worked in IT MNCs and multiple domains, such as manufacturing, highways, energy, insurance, media, healthcare, and publishing. In GAVS, he is leading the intelligent automation, which is part of GAVS AIOps platform, Zero Incident Framework. Very good afternoon, Alvin. So let me start with you, a simple one. How do you think your automation solutions will reduce the time and cost? You may actually take whatever we have discussed with Murali, Suresh, and Kannan into the context and respond that way.
Sure, Chandra. So thank you for inviting me and giving an opportunity to talk on this webinar. And I think one of the important aspect, Chandra, so in terms of the remote endpoints management, the time and cost perspective, how we can optimize and then help is what really matters here. And then, in fact, what Suresh talked about, what Kannan talked about, in terms of the remote working policies and the procedure from the security perspective, and then the VDI, how the VDI can help enabling them without having much of a downtime and all of that. And the TJM again, it identifies and finds where all the problems from an end user computing perspective. It could be Teams or Outlook, or it could be any of those have some problem that will be known by the end user monitoring capabilities. And then since it's an AI driven, the automation can use that as an event or a trigger point so that it can go ahead and then address them. And then that way it can save time and cost for the end user not having any downtime. I think these are the few areas and the methods we follow. However, let me also talk through in terms of how it can reduce engineers' time and cost. Because any end user request has to be addressed by some support engineer or help desk engineer. So if the automation does those standard operating procedure, which is being performed by them, can be done through the automation platform, then obviously they can spend on various value-added activities. Like, say, example, the humans can perform a lot of decision making, various judgments they can make. They can do the brainstorming, idea generations, and then also the problem solving. So they can spend more time towards that rather than they spend time on mundane and routine activities. That's where this platform plays a lot of a major role there. And then not only that, it also makes those the workforce who's, see, when we are automating them, they are more satisfied, they're more engaged, they become happier workforce because they don't need to really spend time on non-value added activities. So those are all the capabilities and the benefits. And the second or the third important, second and third important aspect is reduction in MTTR, and then the overall annual savings, right? In terms of through automation, end users get the benefit of getting their problem solved within very short span of time. And then also because they don't need to really work on the annual savings passed on, the directly proportionate to the employee cost also is being given back to the organization. So that's the benefits which we are talking about. And other than that, what is the benefits it throws to them in terms of number of instances gets reduced. One could be something in the security space, another could be on the improvement, and then some of them on the various general issues what we see the Outlook related issues are more in terms of the remote working. So in that case, that will be directed by transaction journey mapping. And then that alerts comes back to us, then we can automatically go ahead and then reduce those Outlook slow and then performance issue related activities. So those are the things. That's what, if you look at it, I think the McKinsey and others, they found that the way that the digitization happening during this pandemic days are much higher than what it was in the previous years and so on. So those are all the benefits which you are talking about. Yeah, Chandra.
Thanks, Alvin. Now, do you like to talk about the capabilities of the automation that you are building for the zero incident framework?
Sure, Chandra. So if you, I think the entire Remediate, which is a component within ZIF, which does those automations. So this complement and then comprehend what is being done by basically the entire AI ops component within our platform. Particularly when there is a prediction or an event based or the case management related things which comes in. So it picks up that as an input to the automation platform. It can go ahead and then do the automation. Second part is the TJM related. So whenever there is an application related issues or an Outlook related issue, then it go ahead and then does those on that end user computing device. It does that. And the third point, which Murali talked about, the templatization. Say some of them, like finance group has a different template, and then maybe an HR team has a different template. So each template has been assigned with certain memory and the resources, the compute part of it. So when we get to know there is some issues with in the performance aspects or the space availability, the non-interactive automation comes into the place where it can go ahead and then adds additional memory to the same template so the VD user doesn't have those performance issues, or it might be sometimes adding additional space or storage to them. So those are all the way we optimize here from a Remediate perspective. Completely non-interactive, but the problems are getting solved, and then it is also getting recorded in the ITSM tool saying that these are all the transactional details got stored against that particular problem, so that anybody wants to go back and then look at it, they have all those records get added into those particular ticket or instance. So that also has those compliance met in terms of all of that. The other way of doing automation is again interactive self-service. That's where we provide them, a chatbot or portal-based self-services. Particularly what Kannan talked about, Windows update doesn't take place, or they have the identity and access management related issues. All that can be, self-serviced when the user directly interact with the platform. It could be DL management, or it could be installing certain software. It could be anything of that nature. So overall, the objective is to reduce and then reduce the MTTR, and then also be accomplished to make them the satisfied user, particularly the remote end users. Physically, the engineer cannot travel and address the problem. Wherein this entire platform, with the power of VDA, with the power of TJM, with the power of the security policies in place, it go ahead and then does that entire operation, because it's complements that entire scenarios.
Happy to hear that you can solve the Outlook problems in remote end user devices, because we have seen that 50% of the end user incidents are related to Outlook caused by the network and antivirus. And thank you very much, Alvin. Kannan, I actually want to ask you a question, but then in the interest of time, I'm actually moving ahead. Let's see. Thanks to Kannan, Murali, Suresh, and Alvin for your insights and solutions. What we want to convey the guest here is the GAVS has a VDA solution called ZDesk that takes care of information security without compromising any of user comforts. Murali talked about that. AI-driven end-user monitoring to detect bottlenecks and on the remote environment, and the intelligent automation to self-heal. Suresh and Alvin talked about that. Together, this reduces the incidents first, expedites the resolution if incidents happens, and finally reduces the cost of managing remote working overall. thanks to the speakers. It was a wonderful time. Now we can open the floor for questions from the guest. Please feel free to ask the questions. So we have the panelists here to respond to your question. So we have got the first question, and that's an interesting one. Implementing VDA is more a cultural or behavioral problem, not a technical problem. How can we address this? Murali, can you respond to this?
Sure, Chandra. Definitely, it's not a technical challenge or technical problem. We can solve that. Only thing that it is a cultural change, Chandra, because it has to change from the top, and even from the end user side also, they have to fix that mind, saying that we need to use the VDA because it will give a lot of quantitative benefits. They will not feel good when we pull out their laptop or the good performing desktop from them and just giving a normal end device. So that will not look feels, but still they need to change their mind. As I said, a lot of benefits are there, and even we can give a diskless laptop. Still, an end user feel that they're using a laptop. That is a device that needs to connect to the remote desktop. So overall, it's a cultural change, and it definitely not a technical challenge.
Okay, that's good. That's interesting. Then there is another question. This is to Kannan. Not Kannan, sorry. This is to Alwin, but it's related to security. Can you share few self-healing tasks in the security space?
Okay, a very interesting question, Chandra. So, in particular, because we've seen a lot of phishing-related mails, which has been reported by the end user community. So, for them, when the fish mail, because that becomes a lot of issues in terms of they clicked it, then they got into vulnerable attacks and so on. So, wherein if we automate the entire end-to-end process of from the moment they report it, and then look at the threat score against that particular fish mail, and then get the threat score that can be automated through the automated methodology, which is part of our ZIF remediate. You can get the threat score. Based on the threat score, it can go ahead and then block those vulnerable URL or the IP address or the mail address from where it is originated by deciphering those, the observables. We call it as the zip files, or could be an image embedded in that particular mail, or it could be anything within that. So deciphers, gets the threat score. Based on the threat score, it can go ahead and then block those IPs, so that no more further threats coming from the particular thing. This way, this end-to-end remediation has been done using security thing. Other could be, in interest of time, I'll take one more example. Other example is the lot of attacks comes on your firewall, the enterprise firewall. It could be originating from certain specific IPs. So when such attacks comes in from an unknown IPs, that can be detected, and then there can be an entry made in those firewall policies saying that, hey, this from this particular IP or from the range of IPs, whatever alerts comes in, you can block them. So this is again being done by some of our customers. So these are all the few examples, Chandra, to quote.
Okay, thanks, Alvin. And there are many more questions we have received, but we don't have time to go through that. Maybe one quick one, Suresh, you have to respond to this in a minute. The biggest challenge for a remote work is the health of a remote laptop or PC. How to quickly tell in a short span of time the device is healthy before allowing the remote station?
Sure. So two major factors. One, the resource availability of a given laptop, because that's important, so that the kind of be it a disk space or be it a RAM availability, because we might have given enough compute or storage for that, but what's important is whether that much is available for the end user to use. So what if I have dumped with too much of unwanted files, or dumped with too much of unwanted software? So it's quite important that we understand what is actually happening in the end user device. That's the number one health. Number two, definitely from the security perspective, because the right DLP is there in place, right security patches in place. If with these two in place, definitely I think we can assure that one is secured. Second thing is in terms of the capacity or the fastness point of view, it will perform well.
Thanks, Suresh. For the rest
Sure.
of the questions on over email. Once again, thanks everyone. Thanks for taking time to attend this. I hope it was useful, and please feel free to reach us for any of your questions or clarifications. Thank you once again.
Thank you.